Have you ever wondered what could possibly be in this tiny little pond? It's not huge like a lake. It's not even as big as a stock pond at a ranch or something like that. But you would be surprised at the small little organisms that live in this pond. They call this pond home because it has plants growing on the top. It has plants around the edges. It has little rock places that they can hide in, rock ledges that they can get underneath in. And there are lots of flowering plants. So we have insects overhead that sometimes use the pond to lay their eggs. For example, dragonflies. They lay their eggs in the pond. So it's not just about frogs, it's about other things. And we call those other things macroinvertebrates. So what you're going to do is I've collected some pond water, and you're going to be looking in a basin, a white basin of water, at what you might see that wiggles around in this pond that we can't really see until we pull the water out. What uses this pond? Well, during the nighttime, raccoons come over here to visit the pond. We have armadillos that dig all around the pond. Deer and coyote come and drink out of the pond. So it's a pretty active pond. So let's go over and check out what's in your bin of pond water, your little mini pond. This is your pond, and before you actually do anything, you want to just look. So teachers, the students will have no real formal directions for this. There won't be a number 1 do this, number 2 do that, but you as a teacher do have in your learning activities, you have a description of the what's in a pond activity. So just read through that. You'll notice that when you get toward the, after the students have had time to explore what's in their pond, the suggested response is, depending on which quest you're on, the human quest, or the water quest, or the soil quest. So depending on which quest you're on, it doesn't matter. There is still a quest question that will work. Let's take the weather quest, for example. You have a choice of, say, 4 prompts or questions. Choose one that you think would work. Let's take this one, number 3. How could weather change what happens in the LISDOLA pond? Or weather and ecosystems are connected here in the LISDOLA pond, that kind of thing. So again, your quests are there to guide the students as they're going through their day, and what's in the pond fits right in with any of those quests that you've chosen. So you have that. That's your teacher materials, what's in your iPad and those quests. What do the students have? The students, when they walk up, there will be set up on either 6 to 8 tables, depending on the size of your class. Each class will have a pond that has critters in it and pond water. You will have various little magnifying things to use, but really the students can see a lot of these things just with their eyes. But it is kind of fun to put some things under the microscope, all right? Or to look at something that's in a magnifier, and we look through these from the side, all right? So before we get to actually looking at anything, let's talk about what else they have on their tables. We do need adult supervision, all right? Students are not going to be putting their hands in the pond if they can help it. We're going to catch everything basically with spoons. Putting your hands in the pond introduces things to the water. Could be hand soap, could be hand sanitizer, which is harmful to the organisms, and students putting their hands in the water can introduce something to themselves that could be harmful to them. So as we are working through the pond stuff, also be aware that when they're finished, they need to use hand sanitizer, which I'll have out on one of the tables, or just swing right around to the North Classroom, take a restroom break, and wash hands in the restroom. That works too. All right, so we have some spoons that we're going to use for our pond water. We have Petri dish halves. An entire Petri dish is a top and a bottom. We're just going to use the top or the bottom. That'll suit our needs. Little note about not leaving the spoon in the water. Again, we need adult supervision. If students have their iPads, on the table there will be the iPad stand, which keeps an iPad or 2 up out of the water that could spill on the table. And there is also a what you might see in the pond. All right, these are things you might see in LISDOLA pond, and as I find more things, I'll add a few more pages to that. And there is also a descriptive piece about what is a pond ecosystem. So remember, that is a habitat, but it's bigger than a habitat. It's an ecosystem. So that should be hanging right there on the little table sign holder. All right, So let's get to it. You know, you do a little quick introduction to the kids about, safety to the critters in the pond. We generally only put one critter in a petri dish at a time. They don't have to stay in there, and if the table is in the sun, they need to be kind of moved toward the shady area. So how do we get things in a petri dish? Well, we take a spoon. We look at stuff, first of all. Wow, wonder what's moving in there, all right? I would like to see what this duckweed looks like. So I'm just going to scoop up some duckweed with my spoon. All right, maybe I want to look at it under a little microscope. And the microscopes are not electric, so they need to be where they can catch some light. And it's pretty easy to do. You just kind of duck on down, focus it just like you do any other microscope. All right, easy enough. They're little mini dissecting microscopes, but they work great for outside. All right, some other things you can put in your petri dish. We have a dragonfly nymph in there. And again, got some pictures that are going to help guide the kids through that on what's in there. We've got a little beetle that's running around and another little pond plant. We have a snail over here in this one. All right, again, one organism at a time in each of the petri dishes. All right, that's for the health of the organism. Also, you can see them better. And then when the students are finished and you're ready to move on to your next activity in your schedule, all of these things get put back into the pond. But we'll leave them there for just a minute. And then when we're finished, we'll put them back into our little mini pond. So I have a fish in here. So what I would do is I carefully add some water, put the fish in there, and then I pass this around to all of my table mates so they can see the fish also. How many fish do I put in there? Just one fish at a time. If you want to look at another fish, carefully pour this one back out, put another fish in there. All right, in here is a spider, all right, that's been walking up and down the side of this little container. I can look in the top, I can look in the side, depending on where things are moving, if they're not necessarily a water critter. All right, so I can see it right there, or I can look here, see it. When I'm finished with it, again, it goes back in there. Students stay at their own table. All right, so we're not going to be bouncing around to different tables. It's just a little easier, and they kind of tend to focus more on what's in their pond, really take their time, because there will be some tiny little organisms that they may not have seen in the first 5 or 10 minutes. So if they focus on that, they have their iPads, they can take pictures. The beauty of the iPad is you can also zoom. So if they have something that's in a petri dish and they want to really zoom in on it, take a short video like the snail that's moving around in there, they can zoom, take a video, they can do a little audio of their friends talking about that dragonfly nymph, all that kind of stuff. All right? So when you're finished, what we're going to do then is pour everything back into the pond. All right, so we'll drop our fish back in there also. Leave our pond materials on the table. For the next group, leave the pond itself right where it is. Take out any spoons, all right? Don't leave any spoons in the water. And just leave the spoons on the table also. All right, and that's what's in the pond activity for 4th grade.